Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start. On behalf of the FICOMPAS partners, so European Commission Directorate for Home Affairs and Migration, and the European Investment Bank, welcome to this AMIF thematic workshop, which today will focus on financing of refugee labor pathways, challenges and opportunities. So a warm welcome to you in the room, but also to all participants who are connected online. Not sure if the connection works. Yeah, they confirmed that it works. My name is Bruno Rubino. I'm from the European Investment Bank, and I will be your moderator for today. And let me start by saying that FICOMPAS is an initiative of the European Commission, jointly managed together with the European Investment Bank. For the very few of you who do not know what is FICOMPAS, is just to say that very quickly in a few words, is a platform to raise awareness, to provide guidance on financial instruments, on the share management, on the EU share management, and the platform is provided by the European Commission together with the European Investment Bank. The idea is to raise awareness on the use of financial instruments. So not only ERDF, ESF, EIFRD, but also MFAF and AMIF in this case, which all of which have a dedicated work stream on the FICOMPAS. The idea, what are we talking about? We're talking about informing, raising awareness and guide managing authorities and other stakeholders involved to use financial instruments. I guess after 3 days of FICOMPAS, you know more or less what we're talking. We're talking about loans, guarantees, potentially equity, microfinance in this case. But the idea of this session of this afternoon is to speak about the support of integration of third country nationals in the EU. So financing of refugee labor, challenges and opportunities. The idea is to see whether financial instruments, including blended opportunities, blended finance, could be combined. So financial instruments together with grants and address the gaps and possibly attract other investments, scale up the instruments for refugees, and in particular refugees' labor pathways across EU member states. So, building on the insight from the AMIF union action, as well as feedback from some key stakeholders, the discussion of today will focus on, we'll try to identify what is the demand and what is the supply side in terms of financing. The idea is to explore, first of all, if there are models, and which models are probably better than others, and what are the advantages of the different solutions which have been analyzed so far. So, for the workshop of today, we have carried a series of interviews with a number of stakeholders. And first of all, let me take this opportunity to thank who was involved and also for the time that was dedicated to this exercise, which helped a lot to structure the workshop of this afternoon. This has led to a concept note. I guess some of you or all of you have the concept note, but not only went through the concept note, because there is not a point only to have or have received that, but that you go through the point, which is, I would say, would be the starting point of today. Thank also for going through the concept note. I would like to say, please be aware that since we have audience connected online, this workshop will be recorded, and the intention is to publish elements of this workshop on the FICOMPAS website. We're going to also publish, whenever there will be some presentation, the presentation. So I saw today, because I was moderating other panels, a lot of corporate gym like this, but no need, because we gonna publish all the presentation on the website of the Compass. And so without further ado, we'll start really to get into the details. And I would like to call on stage for this first part of this session, Aurélie Belzunces, Head of Sector Integration and Resettlement, C2, DG Home, European Commission. Aurélie, please come. Anna Zurek, Financial Instruments Advisor, and Andras Kassap, FICOMPAS experts. A big round of applause. Very good. Just wait for Anna. She's stuck in traffic. Very good. Aurélie, we're going to start. No, take a sip before you start, please. And we're going to start with you. Can you tell us what refugee labor pathways are and what is the policy context behind this? Over to you. Too much technology in
So can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
So good afternoon. I said my name is Aurélie Belzunces. I'm the Head of Sector for Integration and Resettlement at the DG on Home Affairs. I'm really happy to be here this afternoon and to see the people in the room and also people online. I have a very keen and personal interest in financial instruments, if I can start with that, because in a previous life, long time ago, I used to work on energy labeling and energy efficiency. You know, the small labors on fridges and domestic appliances. But this also applies to buildings. And as you can imagine, the amount of money needed to improve energy efficiency of domestic appliances and for buildings are not really the same. And so we got stuck when it came to how to finance that. And I was working at the time with a bunch of economic nerds. And all together we came up with the idea and they taught me how financial instruments work. And we put together a bunch of financial instruments to help improving energy efficiency of buildings. So that's, yeah, I have a very keen interest in financial instruments. So maybe I think I have a, that being said, there must be a, yes. So good. Maybe to, so that we are all on the same page, what are we talking about when we talk about complementary pathways? So we, it applies to people who are displaced people who are in need of protection, and they come to complement other legal pathways for people in need of protection, so resettlement, humanitarian mission, and you have these complementary pathways. And they include also that they include existing admission avenues that refugees may be eligible to apply to, but which may require operational adjustment to facilitate refugee access. And we have, for instance, and that's something I should have, and that's something that is worth specifying, is that when we talk about complementary pathways and refugee labor pathways, we are, I'm looking at Kostas because he taught me everything I know on complementary pathways for the past year and a half. So I have a lot of pressure on this one. And so complementary pathways and refugee labor pathways can be used, have the same meaning, and can be used oh la vache, sorry.
Interdisciplinary.
No, they can.
I'll try that.
Voilà.
Say it in French. Say it in French.
No, I think even in French, I'm not able to pronounce the word. So anyway, you can use both terms. And so, and we have also, and we need to keep that in mind. We have refugee labor pathways. You have also education pathways, and for example, also family unification. To zoom in a little bit on why refugee labor pathways are so important, I think we are all very much aware now that there's a kind of a shift on the narrative when it comes to legal migration, and that member states are more and more aware that they need to make sure that migrants or incoming migratory flows match with the skill that are in need in our economies. And that's where refugee labor pathways are really important, because we can, it actually fits very well in this narrative. And we come from this protection of, ensuring legal pathways for people in need of protection that meet with the need of our societies when it comes to labor shortages. And the other important aspect is the fact that these pathways are legal, and they offer a very credible and very viable alternative to irregular departure and to displaced people risking their lives to come to Europe. I think that's really something we need to keep in mind, and we need to, well, be proud of when we work on these kind of pathways, because we are basically saving people's life. So that being said, we are the Commission, so we like to issue papers and put together frameworks to guide how to, well, save lives. And to do that, the Commission issued a recommendation in 2020 on how to on the complementary pathways, and the idea was really to guide member states on how to make the most effective use of these pathways. And we, following that, we have also we are also part of a more global framework, and on this we need to be aware that we are not the only ones in the room to do complementary pathways. We have strong partners, and we discuss a lot with them, notably, and I think we have colleagues from UNHCR in the room. UNHCR has this is having a lot of forum, and I'm having also in particular in mind the Global Task Force for Refugee Labor Pathways, in which we regularly meet and discuss. We also indeed have a strong engagement by the member states, and this goes notably through funding, and in particular of quite interesting projects. And so I have in mind notably DT4E project, which we're focusing exclusively on refugee labor pathways. And to be honest, I took this position a year and a half ago, and I was really impressed by the sophistication of these projects and how it was extremely thought through. And we were having this discussion over lunch about the fact that we have this, we have these long pathways, and actors tend to intervene at some steps of the pathway. But I think that, for example, in the DT4E project, there's really this kind of thinking that you need to look at the entire chain of events to make sure that people come to Europe safely and that their skills are properly used. I would like also to refer to the PAFME projects, PAFME initiative, sorry, which successfully launched various projects together with the Council of Europe Development Bank, and these projects. So the idea was to provide microcredits and financial instruments to refugees to enable them to receive training, coaching, and also to start their business. And I was this morning, so this morning I was not in this workshop, I was at the European Migration Forum. And there was this person who is now in Finland, and 10 years ago, he launched his completely, it's super interesting, it's a platform that pulls together, it's an IT platform that pulls together all the various booking platforms for holidays, for example. And he said that he received Booking, Airbnb, and he said that he received a lot of support from Commission's funding, from EU fundings, and had a lot of idea, and was indeed very well supported by the various actors on how he could launch certain innovative idea. And I think it's always, nice to hear that. So we're clearly making a lot of progress. I think I'm really optimistic, and I think financial instruments are for sure the way for one of the way forwards. But we need also to make sure that we are aware of the challenges that are in front of us. And in this regard, we need to make sure that the system that we are putting in place can be replicated, and that, we cannot go for one size fit all, obviously, but having a bit of economy of scale in mind, and making sure that the project that we put together can be replicated, can be sustainable, is clearly a challenge that we, I think, all have in mind in the room. And at the same time, so that's more on the financial instrument aspects, or more on the financial instrument side of the question. But I think we are also all aware that we have other barriers to face, and notably when it comes to the possibility for the refugees to actually come into Europe, and then also for them to make their skills and qualification recognized. I think the Commission is really working hard on that. We are going to issue quite a number of documents in the coming months on aiming at making notably the skills and qualification recognition easier. But this is still something that is in front of us, and that we need to solve. So as I said at the beginning, financial instrument and that's a very long-term relationship, and so I'm really happy to be here, and I really look forward to hearing what you all have to say, either here in the room or online. Thank you very much. I hope.
Thank you. Well, first of all, congratulations for your enthusiasm, because you transmit enthusiasm. Its task is twice as easy, because you said you understand about financial instruments, you have been exposed to that, so it's super easy. We take note of what you said. So the idea of these pathways is to fight this irregular departure, to save lives at the end. and the idea is to support all the member states in this. Maybe one question to you, without doing any ranking of the member states, but there are member states which are more involved, are more exposed to that, without doing any ranking, any comment, but who is in a most advanced situation or position in this respect? If you can disclose.
I think I'm not really a ranking person, so I'm not going to rank or to give any idea, but or any name. But I think what's important, and that's why we were very much keen on having managing authorities, AMIF managing authorities, well, in the virtual room with us. That's because they are our interlocutors when it comes to funding. They are the ones who need to be on board. They are the ones who need to be ready to go for innovative solutions. That's very fashionable right now, and to be bold, because for sure financial instruments are, it was the same thing when something new, when there's a new kid on the block, everybody's a bit skeptical, and then they see that it works and that actually, it's also something that can be so nicely sold to the population, because it really shows, you can really leverage on showing how, the beneficiaries are involved and they are taking risks and they are, so I'm not going to rank anybody. I'm just going, or congratulate anybody. I'm just going to tell to all the AMIF managing authorities, okay, now it's a time to, get bold and modern and try.
Thank you, and this I'll take that this is what you expect from this workshop. So new ideas, and take the commitment and the courage to move to the next steps. No, thank you very much. Very good. So let's move on to Anna. Anna, what are the main concepts behind financial instruments and blended finance?
Thank you, Bruno. Yes, the idea behind this part of this workshop was just to have a common definition, because we're going to discuss today in an interactive workshop this kind of ideas to become a little bit bolder. But what does it actually mean, financial instruments? What does it mean, blended finance? What does it mean, financial instruments combined with grants? So that's why just a small introduction to that. I can just encourage everybody here in the room, but also online, to have a look at our website, feecompass.eu. We have a wide of different types of resources, publications, videos, etc. Because financial instruments have been already proven very successful to support other policy areas through other EU funds, so ERDF, European Social Fund Plus, the European the EAFRD, and also MFAF, so the agricultural and the maritime funds. And we hope that as well in the area of migration, we can prove that there are potentials to use financial instruments as well. In this programming period, AMIF has joined the family of funds that are part of the funds covered by the Common Provisions Regulation, and the financial instruments are a possible form of support, just like grants. They are a way, financial instruments, to support different types of policy objectives, as I mentioned, and a wide range of final recipients. What we call products, financial products, are usually loans, guarantees, equity, and quasi-equity. And what I wanted to underline is that in this programming period, the Commission has widened significantly the possibilities to combine financial instruments. So, for instance, a loan with grants that could cover some non-financial support to a final recipient. This provides, in many cases, a very interesting alternative to what I would call pure grant funding. And what is a big advantage of financial instruments is, of course, that as loans are repayable, that the resources come back to the managing authorities and can be reused to different types of activities again and again and again. So this is a really important factor in the times where resources are scarce and we need to all support more and more measures. So here, just three main advantages of financial instruments: the revolving effect that I just mentioned, but also very important is the leverage effect. Usually, when financial instruments are implemented, financial intermediaries are as well involved. So this is the body implementing the instrument. It could be, for instance, a microfinance provider. It could be a national promotional bank of a country, different types of financial intermediaries. And they usually contribute additional resources, creating leverage effects. So from the, let's say, €1, they can contribute another euro, which creates a bigger volume of the resources available. So this is an important advantage of financial instruments as well. And third of all, financial instruments, because we use bodies implementing financial instruments that already lend to this type of final recipients usually, they are closer to the market and very often as well preferred by the final recipients because they get the money up front. They know how those instruments usually work, loans, and we also say that financial instruments always make sense if there is a revenue generating character or a cost saving character. So to allow basically the resources to be paid back. Some key considerations. So we started this FICOMPAS work stream on to explore the potential for financial instruments in the area of integration of third country nationals back in 2022. Obviously, then the Ukraine war started. There was also a very specific situation. But we generally looked into the areas where financial instruments make more sense and whether there are maybe some already examples. And we actually did see that many of, for instance, ESF plus financial instruments already cover this group in a way, specifically microfinance instruments to be precise. I mentioned already that the CPR governs the implementation. So the big advantage is that as the other funds have built up already such an expertise in using financial instruments. The advantage for managing authorities is that they all, and they are usually described very well on our website through different types of publications, this knowledge is there already. So no new things need to be involved. Things that work, for instance, in ESF Plus could be replicated as well with AMIF. And as I mentioned, this is very important that it's not to replace grants. It is for a specific type of projects that have this revenue generating or cost saving character for projects that are what we would call bankable. So that's really important. But we will discuss today whether maybe in this area of refugee labor pathways, there are actually such dimensions that could be considered. I don't want to go through all these advantages. I just want to basically make a point that through our work with the other funds, we see that really for final recipients, very often financial instruments are as well a suitable form of support that they actually encourage. We just finished a session before on microfinance where we had the third country national living in Spain who started her own business, and she testified it as well. We hear the stories again and again. Third country nationals very often, for instance, for microfinance, they're for entrepreneurial ideas, they are very, per se, very entrepreneurial, used to starting their own business as well from their homeland. So that seems to be a very suitable indeed form. Just to mention, I mentioned those typical products. So we have for each of those products, we have publications, really starter publications. So we understand that in the audience, online and in person, some persons might not be familiar with those concepts and the dimension with EU funds. So please visit the website and take a look at the documents, also audiovisual ones, to widen your knowledge. And I just wanted to mention that because we speak about financial instruments, but there are also different types, other types of repayable support. So apart from the financial instruments under shared management funds, there are also EU central level financial instruments. In this programming period, it's especially the big program of InvestEU, which covers, for instance, the guarantees for microfinance providers and social economy finance providers that supports lending to vulnerable groups. Bodies such as the EIB, which I represent, but also in the audience we have colleagues from the Council of Europe Development Bank, also the EIF. They have also, from their own resources, they do loans, guarantees, and other quasi-equity instruments. There are also other institutions, national or regional promotional banks, for instance, that have as well loans, guarantees, and equity. Etc. And I mentioned already combination. So whenever we talk about combination, we usually say combination of grants with financial instruments under shared management funds. And I just wanted to mention that what we understand under blended finance are the situations where different resources, for instance, financial instruments and grants, are mixed within a single mechanism or a structure together and forming one basically one source. So there are several examples of such blending activities. Might be that our CV colleagues will mention one facility that is currently for microfinance. But this is quite an interesting scheme of facilities and with the purpose basically to de-risk investments and make projects bankable and to finance a range of projects within one scheme. So that's in brief about the terminology. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. So what I retain is already quite a big production of documents and guidance material on the FICOMPAS website. You mentioned financial instruments are not there to replace grants, but the idea is to try to combine. But maybe one direct question to you, who are the typical financial intermediaries involved in financial instruments for migrants and refugees? Third country nationals.
Yeah, so I mean, usually we see it, for instance, the EIF implements this InvestEU guarantee for supporting microfinance and social enterprise finance providers, and we see that many of the microfinance institutions that they support, they need to report to the EIF quite a significant effort, and they always report as well the types of final recipients that they support, and third country nationals in this pie chart that we have is really a significant part. So, for instance, microfinance providers that are active in many countries are as an important stakeholder. I think that one of them is here with us and will speak. Social ethical banks as well. So we also have, I think, Banca Etica on the program today. So this is an example as well of such a bank. Obviously, as well, national and regional promotional banks. So there's actually a wide variety of financial intermediaries somehow involved in supporting this area.
Okay, but let's say that I'm a managing authority. Which I do not know necessarily the financial environment, how do I recognize these financial intermediaries in the market? How can I detect which are the suitable ones?
Usually, it's good to have a look at at their products, no? And I mean, we just discussed, no, that usually it's third country nationals have entrepreneurial ideas, no, or so in terms of this, I guess that the easiest way is to. And also to liaise with us, FICOMPAS, no, and the stakeholders that participate in our here events, etc. But yeah.
Very good, thank you. Ondras, let me ask you, so you were involved into, let's say, the preparation activity which led to this workshop, and you had quite a number of interaction with a number of stakeholders. And the preparation, I understand, took place between during the summer until the end of last month. So maybe if you can give us a bit of a summary of what were the main findings in this respect. Over to you.
Bruno, thank you very much, and I wish good afternoon to everyone. It's a real pleasure to have so many people in the room and also online. I'd like to lead you through the conclusion of these 8 interviews carried out. On the slide behind me, you see these 8 organizations. Together, they represent broadly both the demand and supply side of financing. These organizations are involved in refugee labor pathways in one way or the other. Before talking about the findings, let me just briefly take you through the different steps and stages of refugee labor pathways, just to get an idea of what this is. This is a very long chain and, of course, a bit simplified, but it always starts with the identification of refugees. It is not as easy as it seems, as we heard in the last workshop. It takes an effort. It is also important from a labor perspective to identify their skills, screen them, put it in a database. Maybe we will hear about this as well today. Train them in their country of first asylum already in terms of language and skills, then move on to organizing the pathway itself, which again is a very complex task. For instance, matching the refugees with employers within the EU. It finishes with a pre-departure travel and support, and just then can the refugees enter the EU, start with visa issuance, immigration processing. With its complexities, we all know, reception, temporary accommodation, which is the first basic need of refugees when they enter the EU. From our perspective, assistance related to housing and labor market integration is a very important step, and these often go together. It is an important finding as well. Without housing, there can be no effective labor market integration. It continues with pre-employment training. Often training in the country of first asylum is not enough. They need to match the requirements in the labor market to the level of the EU. Then we have employment itself, obviously, but we shouldn't forget what comes after employment, retention as well, and also, in some cases, mentoring. So this is the step, and the actors you have seen are intervening in or helping various stages throughout this process, but not overseeing the whole process. Some NGOs may focus on the beginning, identifying refugees or matchmaking. Some help them after arrival in fulfilling basic needs, while a microfinance institution, as we heard a lot about today, might provide them financing towards the end of this pathway. So this complexity is very important, and it also leads to a conclusion that coordination along this pathway is key, and that was confirmed by all of the participants that we have talked with. What is the present case? Currently, there are only a few structured initiatives in place, mostly small-scale pilots. These are very important programs. We have heard examples, plenty of examples today in the previous workshop, and these are important but small scale. It is also very important to point out that activities within the member states vary considerably in terms of organizing refugee labor pathways within the EU. These depend on a number of factors, most importantly, the sheer exposure to incoming refugees, but also language. Just think about Spain and Spanish-speaking refugees as opposed to Italy or other countries. Also local political context, cultural context, or obviously the legal background. Scalability is an important question. It was brought up several times. It is challenging, but not only because of financial constraints, they exist of course, but also because of administrative and other types of challenges. Let me mention one. During the discussion, there was one important finding, namely that dealing with serving refugees needs a great deal of personal interaction. And from our perspective, if we look at financing, this is very important. Lending to a refugee cannot be automated to the same extent as lending to a regular client. So this is one barrier to scalability, obviously. I have mentioned coordination, the importance of coordination. And in terms of financing, this is mostly grant-based and mostly based on the own resources of these organizations, on philanthropy, donations, local grant programs, and of course, I've heard MIF is playing an important complementary role. There are also microfinance institutions, ethical social banks providing products, but it is important to point out that these products that they offer usually cover a much broader range of vulnerable groups than refugees specifically, as often it doesn't make refugee-specific products viable. This is the present case. In terms of needs and gaps, let's look at first the refugees themselves. As I said, grant-based approaches, according to interviewees, should or need to remain the main and most suitable form of support. Why? Because their needs are mostly related to accommodation, basic living costs, certain basic trainings, civic orientation, cultural orientation, and these activities do not generate revenues, at least not directly. Therefore, they cannot realistically be supported by repayable forms of support. However, during the discussions, it was clear, and we have seen again in the previous workshop examples for, that when a refugee has a stable employment or has a viable entrepreneurial activity, then repayable forms of support can be very relevant in terms of personal loans or microloans, depending on the situation of the refugees. Still, there are significant barriers, we all know. Often they lack credit history, obviously. They need collateral. Often they do not have stable income. So these are challenges and they need to be remembered. Overall, loans are viable for a very relatively small group of refugees if we mean them directly, and they also need close interaction, personal engagement for the businesses, business development services, and these products need to pay attention to avoiding excessive financial risk for them. What about these organizations I mentioned earlier? NGOs, cities, civil society organizations, labor market actors, other relevant stakeholders cover a wide range of activities along the chain I just showed you earlier. Therefore, their needs differ as well in terms of financing. Cities, for instance, can play an important role in these pathways, but all actors have their role. In general, the financing needs of this group are also grant-driven. Because of same reasons, these activities often do not generate revenues directly, therefore must be continued to be financed by grants. However, the interviews also pointed out one specific exception in this area, and this is related to potential labor market actors, for instance, recruitment agencies, who may have an interest in repayable forms of support to finance their costly recruitment and training programs if repayment is somehow linked to the successful employment of the refugees later on. It's an interesting outcome of these discussions. Moving on to employers themselves, we expected a great deal of demand from their end. However, these expectations were a bit lowered. Of course, we all know there is a significant labor shortage in many of the sectors you see here. Healthcare, elder care, which may be very relevant for in terms of refugee labor pathways. The last point, if I would like to point out one, renewable energy, that was stressed by many of the partners, installing PV panels, doing AC installations. It is a large sector, and they can be taught within a matter of weeks to start working, so that is an important part. However, the typical employers, mostly private sector company, medium, large companies, social enterprises, NGOs, they are often afraid of the cost They are often afraid of the risks, and where it is really successful is when they recruit at scale. So recruiting 20, 30 similar profiles at once, and this is where the risks are justified. From a corporate perspective, this is where the risk can be sold to the board. So this is where they use refugees in scale. So overall, the conclusion was that there is limited demand from the side of employers, and this demand, this is important, is often invisible to the recruitment agencies and to the NGOs. So it must be elicited in smart ways. I'm finishing with microfinance institutions, social and ethical finance actors, and those who work in this sector, you know that, but I think it's important to point out that they not only provide financing to the refugees themselves, but also to other NGOs, organizations who serve the refugees in the EU or possibly already in the country of the first asylum. This is a very diverse sector. I would not go into the details, but they involve a lot of different types of organizations, including banks, non-banking financial institutions, credit unions. This is true for them. I already mentioned they have a broader product portfolios, not focusing on refugees. This would be not justified. And for them, obviously, risk-sharing instruments can be relevant to expand their loans and credit lines to their target groups. So overall, this is the landscape that we have regarding the future. As I said, financing related to refugee labor pathways in the EU currently does not involve repayable instruments. The current financing gap, because of the reasons I just mentioned, is surprisingly relatively small. It is, of course, worth exploring what Anna just mentioned, exploring how other funds and other initiatives can address some of these needs identified. And of course, the key question is how EU member states can make themselves active and initiate pilot projects in order to scale these activities, in order to identify elements that may be suitable for repayable forms of support. And this is why we are here today, to explore these options together. So with this note, I'd like to conclude and yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andres. So what I retain is a few structured initiatives in the member states. Scalability is a question mark, is challenging. You also mentioned the importance of non-financial services, or in jargon, BDS, business development services. And also something that, of course, in addition to more or favorable terms to the final recipients, but also what like you said, is recruit at scale is key for a recipe for the beginning of a success of this. But maybe a question for you. You had this series of interviews or preparatory work, intensive exercise, but what did surprise you during the interview stage?
In terms of surprise, I think I expected a large financial gap, something of a large volume of money missing from the system. I think, of course, financing is needed, that's obvious, but there are these other factors I just mentioned, like identifying refugees, somehow identifying the demand at the side of the companies, that these are prerequisites to any sort of further financing. And I think that was a true surprise on my end throughout the whole process.
Very good. No, thank you. We have the time for one question at this stage from the audience.
We have one online.
Okay, we have one question online, so Dildon. Okay.
Good afternoon. So just one question online. We received, it was from Tomoki Yamanaka from IOM, and it was very interesting. How can organizations such as the UN and NGOs engage in discussion with donor partners, such as the Commission, on the financial instruments presented at the country level?
Oh, really, this question is looking at you. Huh?
Well, I think by attending this kind of event. No, but really, joke aside, that's really by having these conversations and also by as I said, we have these fora where we discuss, like for example the global task force. So there's really and to come to us. I think that the door is open, and that's for me the best way and the most straightforward way to engage with us.
Very good. Anna, would you like to add?
Yes, I mean, I understand on national level, correct? So if we're talking here specifically about AMIF, so if a managing authority in a member state, so the initiative needs to be coming from the managing authority, but usually a managing authority before launching an instrument is starting an exercise that is called ex-ante assessment, where we see the demand and the supply side of this. They're brainstorming ideas for financial instruments, and usually in this stage, they, the people who are behind the ex-antes, contact the different stakeholders and involved in such projects. So I would assume that then also IOM or other institutions would be taken into the conversations together to brainstorm what would work for a particular member state.
Very good, thank you. Anders, would you like to? No, it's okay. We said everything. No, first of all, let's stop here because there are hundreds of questions. Unless there are other questions, no. I will stop this first part of the workshop, thanking Aurélie, Anna, and Andres. Thank you very much. And I will ask Aurélie and Anna if you want to join the audience. I would also, and it was not by chance that Andres remained here, because first of all, I'm going to call the distinguished panelists for the next session. We have three physical here. So Saoirse O'Callaghan, Global CEO of Talent Beyond Boundaries, TBB. Simone Grillo, who's acting as Strategic Marketing Expert at Banca Etica. And Juliana Hajek, who's Head of EU Programs and New Instrument at Council of Europe Development Bank. Good afternoon, everybody. And we have online Prerna Kodhuri, Financial Solution and Corporate Partnership Manager at LAMP, which is Labor Mobility Partnership. And we should be able at least to see the face of, at least in this initial stage. Can we see the face? I challenged the technology unexpectedly. And this is, I have to say that this is my third moderation of today, and I guess I deserve a bit of a break. So I will ask Andras to take a bit over this, but I'm going to be here to at least to keep the time.
Thank you
Andras,
very much,
over
Bruno.
to you, but I don't see, but you confirm that she's online? You see it. Okay, so you can go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I welcome all of you. It's a pleasure to be with you on this stage. And we would like to go on with this first working session, which focuses on the needs and funding gaps. But also we will have a second working session, and we will, in general, well, I think we need to, yes, thank you. We have too much reverb on the...
I don't know, maybe it's the computer there, if you can...
Perhaps.
No.
Okay, so we would like to set it as an exploratory workshop. What I mean by this is that it is not our objective to stand up with ready-made solutions with the product ideas. We would like to collect your experiences, your ideas, and also that from the audience here and also online to help us further this topic in relation to refugee labor pathways. So I ask you to be reflective, be active, etc. Because your contributions is what the success of this workshop depends on. So with this note, I would like to start this session, but before I turn to you, we would like to have a small Slido. And again, I challenge the technical team to...
Again. Yes,
to
if we
start
can
the
have the
Slido.
QR code, please.
Yes. If you don't know this,
Very good.
you just have to scan this with your phone, and there will be a question.
Can I ask to Juliana to just move a bit your head because you are in the middle of... Sorry, Juliana, but thank you.
Yes, and the question should appear on the slide. Is it working? Yes. Good. So what kind of organization do you represent? This is the question. And I'm eagerly waiting for the responses. Okay, that best describes. Yes, yes, I see. Yeah, it's okay. Good. Let me just check. Does it work online as well? For the okay, the online participants. Let me finish this session, and I like when I do statistical analysis. I like the other category, which is very useful for the analysis. But right now, we see there are managing authorities, European Commission, NGOs. European Commission is coming up. Public authorities, managing authority of other EU funds, and this mystical other category. I hope today's discussion will shed some light on this, but I guess these are NGOs, microfinance actors. I guess that was the category that was covered under other. So that's good. We just wanted to see what the composition in the room is like, and it's good to know. So overall, many different organizations are represented, and this is very useful for the discussion. With this note, I would like to turn to you, Sorcha, with the third presentation, and I'd like to ask you to walk us through your work, the countries, sectors you operate in, and the challenges you face. Over to you.
I'll take your microphone. Hello, everyone. I'm Sorcha O'Callaghan, and I'm the CEO of Talent Beyond Boundaries. And Talent Beyond Boundaries is the first global NGO to work on refugee labour mobility. And yeah, just a note to say it's fantastic. I was talking with a colleague just as we arrived to see so many different people in the room. The labour mobility field is a small group of kind of wonks who got into this area over the last 10 years, and it's just fantastic to see interest, which is solely and really needed, I think, in terms of financial instruments. And I've been asked to talk a little bit about Talent Beyond Boundaries work, to give a kind of a practical perspective on what we do, to talk about some of the challenges, to talk about some of the financing, and to talk about some of the needs in 5 minutes. So I'll try. So Talent Beyond Boundaries works to change migration systems so that displaced people can migrate internationally for work, so that they can use their skills to rebuild their lives in new countries with both dignity and purpose. And we started out 10 years ago, and we were laughed at, not just by, countries and people that might be skeptical about migration, but by refugee-serving organizations. But by 2019, we had moved the first refugee to Australia under a refugee labour mobility scheme. And since then, we've been working with governments around the world to open labour mobility pathways. We've been working with many others to build a labour mobility ecosystem. We've been working with employers to encourage them to employ refugees, and then supporting refugees to secure jobs and then relocate to work. And it's working. It's working at a small scale, but we now have 4 dedicated displaced talent visa programs globally enacted in law or policy. So in Australia, where it was first started, in Canada, in the UK, and now also in Italy. And there are displaced talent pathways across the EU. Germany, Spain, Ireland, Slovakia, France, Belgium, the Netherlands have pathways, have employed people, are receiving people. Not all of them, but they're interested and engaged. Over 400 employers globally have employed through dedicated labour mobility pathways. 96% of them say they do it again. And the key sectors, Andreas, you mentioned, are healthcare, IT, transport, construction, green skills. Most importantly, while it's still small scale, 2,500 people have now benefited and secured a pathway to safety through our work. And because we're talking about finance mechanisms and financing, I'll talk a little bit about what that means money-wise. Starting salaries range from about 25,000 to 50,000 euro per annum, which is thousands of % higher than the salaries that they would be receiving at home. And so the potential to leverage some of this impact is huge. So there's impact for the individuals involved, but there's also wider impacts through remittances. 84% of our candidates are sending money home, averaging over 400 euros per month. That's over 700% of average monthly incomes in Syria and Sudan. And so in a recent study of our work, 600 relocated workers are injecting approximately 2.5 million annually into vulnerable displaced populations. So we're having effect in countries of arrival as well as in countries of displacement. And importantly, a study in the UK where we supported 250 nurses into the national health system showed that they are contributing over 1.5 million per year in taxes. So there's the benefits across the board are visible. And we talk about this being a win-win for individuals and for employers and for countries, but I think now we also have to talk about a win in terms of the policy environment. I think in a negative kind of migration environment, this is a safe and legal route where people are coming because they are filling job shortages, they are in demand, they're coming and contributing from the start. So a little bit about the costs. Depending on the costs associated with the pathway, and they vary considerably in terms of the visa costs, the travel costs, but also levies that are often put on these pathways by governments around skills training and other levies. Depending on how much upskilling is required, which you mentioned about. The costs range from about 7,000 or 8,000 euro per candidate to much higher in Australia and the UK, where visa costs and governments costs are much higher. These costs currently are shared between the employer, who often pays for the recruitment visa and flight costs, with governments and public bodies, including AMIF, which is fantastic, often pay for some of the training costs and the integration costs, and philanthropy, which has been so essential to actually incentivize and mobilize and get these programs running. But as we know, philanthropic money from migration is sharply in decline, and employers are only willing to pay, a contribution to these costs on par with what they would pay for international recruitment. So what are we doing to try and fill these financing costs? And what's happening in terms of innovative financing? I mean, maybe the first thing to say is that some of the grant money that we're receiving from philanthropy is moving from kind of typical grants much more towards impact grants. So we're being paid for the number of people that we support successfully into jobs and to arrive in countries. That has major advantages in terms of its kind of incentivizing scale and efficiency, but also some disadvantages, which I can talk about. The second, there's been a focus on trying to spread some of the costs and reduce some of the costs through offering actually loans to candidates. Some of these have been quite ad hoc through kind of, entrepreneurial employers using salary sacrifice schemes. There's been loans, government loans actually in Canada, and kind of education type loans that have worked very well to support candidates on arrival with housing and other costs. But very excitingly, we're working now in Italy, where I'm not going to also talk about a ranking system, but they are really doing very well in Italy. We're working to embed an income sharing agreement, working Talent Beyond Boundaries, working with partners including Pathways International, UNHCR and Diaconia. So 4 different partners who are collaborating together to design and establish an income share agreement, which would be a revolving fund type of arrangement, which would be pre-funded by a philanthropic grant of about $500,000, which then would be offered to candidates who, once they earn over a certain threshold of salary, would pay back a certain amount to offset the costs of this movement, and really to incentivize more employers. That's ultimately what it is. The cost is a major disincentive to employers. If we can reduce the costs or even delay the costs for employers or spread them, we're certain that we can crack one of the elements that is a barrier to scale. So we estimate with kind of this, support that we're seeing from the national authorities in Italy, municipal authorities really actively engaged, and this consortium approach that we have established together with other really close partners, that we can scale up from about 50 arrivals in 2025 to hopefully to about 300 next year. But there's so much more that we could achieve with more funding. And I have to say, Andres, I take slight issue with you in terms of we have piloted labour mobility to death. We now need to move beyond pilots into much larger scale programs, because I think they're at that point where we have sustainable, larger scale programs, we can start attracting different types of financing to actually leverage the predictability of benefit and value that derives from these programs. So I think there's many ways that we could look at financing. One is to de-risk and support employers who, if they're employing at scale, often have to, put down quite a lot of money in advance to ensure that people can come through. A second is to see whether there could be impact investing. And then a third would be to look at some of the grants and programs you were talking about. But I would really urge there that we work on both policy and programs, incentivize authorities and governments to make permissive pathways so that we can scale up. That we ensure that we look at multi-sector approaches across a range of different actors, and that we look at programs that could work both in the sending countries and countries of arrival, and unlock, in particular, some of the barriers you talked about in terms of housing and integration, which is a major gap. But I'll stop there. But yeah, just so delighted that there's interest in this agenda.
Thank you very much. I think this was really interesting, and the term piloted to death was, I hope I understood it correctly. I really is worth it to the summary of this. It is very interesting of the global scale you are operating in. And Italian example, I think Italy will come up today more than once, not because Italy is the only country where such initiatives happen, but it can be a good example that can be perhaps replicated in other contexts. And also Canada, you brought up the example of Canada, where very interesting loan products exist, and this is also worth exploring. Thank you very much once again. I will go back to you with questions later on, but let me now move on to our next presenter. And this will be a first for me, because she will be not sitting here, but she will be joining online. So the final challenge for the technical team is to put her on the screen. Maybe, could you do it a bit bigger?
Perfect. Perfect. So,
First, let me do a sound check.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Great.
I will talk little because I hear myself back, so I give the floor to you.
Thanks, Andrash, and good afternoon, everyone. I didn't quite realize my face would be this big, but nice to see everyone. My name is Prerna Chaudhary, and I'm from Labor Mobility Partnerships. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak about our work today, and I hope it'll provide some insights when we're thinking about how best to finance refugee labor pathways. I believe there's a presentation. Thank you. And we can move to the next slide. So we can quickly talk to you about the work that we do at Labor Mobility Partnerships, or LAMP for short. So we're an international NGO and see our role as that of a systems architect, if you will, designing and testing solutions that aim at increasing the quantity and quality of cross-border labor migration. And so we do this in two ways, with the ultimate outcome of catalyzing a global labor mobility ecosystem. The first is by developing labor mobility models that deliver up to 10 times income gains. You heard social statistics too, for workers, and also meet employer needs. And so the idea here is to show that best-in-class and well-managed migration models are possible and that address common barriers and concerns. The second, and that's the second pillar you see there, is through what we call multipliers of impact. So building coalitions for policy change, such as coalitions of Global South allies or employers, and by incubating global solution providers. So thinking really about commercially viable providers of technology, finance, and services to facilitate responsible mobility in a scale and sustainable way. Next slide, please. And so what we've noticed, maybe I'll wait for the slides to change. Thank you. And what we've noticed, and since we are all taking, or Sorsha's taking offense at what Andras said, I can do the same, is that funding is actually one of the biggest challenges, targeted funding and financing for those on the move. And so whether this is demonstrated by a lack of cross-border mobility showing up as a core funding or financing priority for many traditional funders and investors, or just in the formal financial system offering relevant products for those on the move, or the ecosystem supporting people on the move. And I should clarify, actually, when we say people on the move, because it can mean many different things, we mean the spectrum of low to mid-skilled migrant workers, refugees and displaced people, and low to mid-income international students. And so to bring more attention and conversation to the space, we launched the Mobility Finance Network, incubated within Labor Mobility Partnerships last year. And it's a community of people and ideas at the intersection of the three circles you see there: finance for impact, cross-border labor mobility, and human rights and livelihoods. And our rationale really here is the creation of such a space where we can nudge these groups towards the center. Next slide, please. And so the Mobility Finance Network aims to strengthen the mobility ecosystem across three areas. The first is finance for people on the move. And so that could look like income share agreements, pre-departure loan products, anything that reduces the reliance on informal borrowing, or rather actually reduces the risk of debt bondage. The second pillar is around business support. So thinking about working capital or insurance products for employers or companies directly or indirectly facilitating legal and responsible cross-border labor mobility. And the third pillar is around tech investment. So anything that streamlines the mobility process, so platforms around skilling, matching, and language training. And next slide, please. So a few examples of what we've done in the space when it comes to financial solutions. And maybe just to clarify that all of these financial solutions cover the funding gaps in the mobility process for aspiring workers, such as, these costs could be language training, document verification, skills training. But these costs are currently not covered by employers, as they're not legally obligated to pay in that particular pathway or sector. And so the three examples you see here, one, we've designed a pre-departure loan product with a financial institution in India that has now been offered to over 100 migrants, going to started off with Germany, but now they have supported or provided loans to migrants going to Japan and also the UK. The second is we've designed a mobility program for refugees in Rwanda going to Germany in partnership with global mobility higher education and ISA provider Malengo. And that's currently being implemented. So the cohort of workers are undergoing language training, and that's under an income share agreement model. And currently, and this is still in the design phase, we are working on designing labor pathways for displaced people from Latin America to Spain. And that includes also design of an income share agreement, which will be initially donor funded through a revolving facility, but the idea is that once it scales and is able to sustain itself, the income share provider will take it on. Next slide, please. And so the key learnings that I'd like to call out here, more than challenges, shall we say, is that the funding and financial ecosystem for people on the move is still really nascent. It's not developed. Really, to kickstart it, we need concessional and philanthropic funding to develop the system, to support the first movers, to allow actors to take the risk that they would be able to with the right type of funding. The second is around thinking about incorporating more cost sharing models as a critical design element. So to what Sorsha was saying, bringing on sharing some of the costs with workers, but then eventually helping employers understand that there's a difference between what they perceive as the risk versus the actual risk in a pathway, in covering language costs, et cetera. And again, you need concessional and philanthropic funding to show that and to reduce the risk around these first movers. The third is, when you're thinking about developing financial products for the segment, there's a few things to think about. The design features for the target segment do really need to be creative, especially when you're thinking about underwriting. So typical credit history, co-borrow requirements, collateral requirements obviously will likely not exist. So thinking about future earning potential, maybe a conditional offer of employment from the employer, things actually that are forward-looking or proxies for backward-looking criteria is necessary. Second, thinking about the profitability frontier, and again, that affects the type of product you would use. So certain sectors and certain jobs, you would earn more and you'd be able to pay back quicker. So think about nursing in Germany, for which a loan product is ideal. Certain other types of pathways or even populations, such as, say, refugees or displaced workers, or if you think about apprenticeships in Germany, they don't pay enough, or they pay less, shall we say, over a longer period of time, and you need a longer period of time to pay back. And in that case, you need an income share agreement. So again, thinking about the type of product and suiting it to the segment is really important. And then finally, understanding the specific needs of the target segment. Too often, I think, and it's very important to design around the segment, of course, around the migrant worker, around the refugee, but then balancing that with the risk return profile of the lender, the financial institution, or the employer is equally important if you're trying to design for scale and sustainability. And then finally, in the spirit of not reinventing the wheel, there is a very small, but growing ecosystem of financial institutions, income share providers, and social enterprise who are targeting people on the move. And we always think it's important to build up their products, help them scale, expand their networks, rather than starting from scratch. So thank you again, Andres and everyone, for having me. And I'm happy to continue the discussion in the Q&A.
I think a round of applause goes to Perna too. Thank you very much for joining. It was a pleasure listening to you, even in this format. And I think the examples for activities which I just mentioned at the beginning that can be subject to repayable financing were very well presented. I like the word coalitions that you used in your presentation earlier, and I think partnerships and coalitions are very important to develop these labor pathways. And yes, and cost sharing that you mentioned in your last slide, it's also an interesting takeaway. I think that might be one of the prerequisites of refugee labor pathways working. Thank you very much for your presentation. And now is the time to go back to Italy with Simone Grillo from Banca Etica. And let me just ask you, how many of you were present in the previous workshop in the afternoon? Okay, Simone, so as we discussed, you can start it all over again and explain what you do and how do you relate to refugee labor pathways.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if, okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. So many thanks for the opportunity to share for the second time, but it's an opportunity, and so many thanks because there is an opportunity to have a specific the opportunity to have share knowledges, experiences, and informations about an important task. So just a little presentation from my side from Banca Etica. I represent an organization created in Italy 26 years ago. And dedicated to ethical finance. So we are a bank, a financial intermediary, and we collect savings. Sorry, collect savings to realize loans to individuals and organizations with the aim to realize a social and environmental added value, a social environmental impact. So organizations and people that received loans from Banca Etica have to realize not only an activity in the real economy, but also an activity that can generate a social and environmental measurable impact. As you can see, we have collected in these years more than 2.5 billion euros from the savers, social investors, people and organizations that are absolutely social investors. And we have put at disposal more than 1.3 billion in loans to even to organizations, families and businesses in different fields that coherent with our mission, our credit policy, and our goals. As you can see, the impact areas of our activity, the organizations that received credit from loans from Banca Etica are engaged in different activities related to social inclusion. So housing, health, culture and education, community, environment, energy transition, and so on. And obviously, there are also organizations involved in the activity of inclusion of migrants, and organizations, cooperatives, or social cooperatives, or other types of enterprises that also involved in their activities refugees or migrants. Just to give you some example, cooperatives involved in food and beverage, organizations involved in textiles production, even using cycle and recycle and upcycling methods of production. So there are also cases of innovative, even on the environmental point of view, experiences. In the future, we hope to boost our activity, our engagement in help organizations that involve the migrants and asylum seekers or refugees in their activities, even thanks to the AIB. We have signed an agreement of 60 million agreements that will help us in develop our investments in the real economy in different areas, and these areas includes also investments in activities that can generate working opportunities or entrepreneurial opportunities for even for refugees. Looking at our experience, as you can see in this slide, I share with you some example of the subjects and fields of work in which these organizations, particularly cooperatives and social cooperatives, so members of the world of the social economy, realize activities, and we help these organizations thanks to our financial services, particularly loans or micro loans, even granted by our own instruments of guarantee. As Banca Etica, just to give you an example, in the field of microcredit, we manage a guarantee funds created by our investors. So, for example, people that invests in ethical funds can put at disposal €1 for each €1,000 invested to a fund that can be used by Banca Etica to realize as a guarantee funds when put at disposal microfinance loans, even to people, refugees or asylum seekers. So, and as you can see, with particular reference to the activities realized by cooperatives or social enterprises that offer training and working opportunities to refugees and migrants, you can see that their activities includes also a number of some of the services that are included in this slide. So in these cooperatives, people have the opportunity to approach the literacy, to have help in the management of a bureaucratic aspect related with the situations, condition, and obviously technical. On the point of view of the technical aspect, training on the technical aspect of their job in the textiles, in environmental services, and so on, but also to implement their soft skills, particularly in the field of cooperative, because obviously the work in a cooperative system is different by the work realized in other types of organizations. So the ability of these organizations to put at disposal, to offer these services, represent an important aspect in the inclusion program of people, of these people, of the refugees. I am at the end of my presentation, I can present that I am absolutely agree with the aspects indicated in the other presentations, because there are a number of instruments, financial instruments, that could be used, from micro loans to loans, even others, investments, bonds, sustainable bonds, and so on. There are some social investors that are available to invest in these projects. Obviously, we have to help these projects via non-financial services in terms of financial. Okay, just the last slide. We have to help these organizations in terms of financial planning. So help these organizations in define their financial needs, choose the correct financial instruments, define a funding mix, and create new synergies even between financial entities, philanthropical organizations, public funds, with the aim to reduce the cost of the credits and share the risks, and obviously help this organization even on point of view of business plan and so on to tackle the market constraints in the field in which they work. So I'm at your disposal for eventual question, but thank you for your attention.
Simone, thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation, and we have heard a lot, but I think you have also brought a couple of new sectors into the game by introducing food and beverage sector and textile sector, which are indeed very relevant. And I think that as a slide where you presented that with the importance of training and other extra activities in relation to refugee labor pathways is very important. It represents kind of a systemic thinking that I think is needed in this context, and you also round it up with partnerships and partnering with these organizations. So I think this is going to be a common theme. In this first block, we would have our last presenter, Juliana Hijek, and had a few programs and a new instrument from a Council of Europe Development Bank. And apologies, you will also need to double up some of the information that you've already shared, but I think it is worth repeating because it is highly relevant for this subject matter. Over to you, Juliana.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. Very interesting. I'm taking a lot of notes already, so learning a lot. So I'd like to begin with a quick introduction on CEB. In order to understand what the CEB can do in this area, I think it's important to understand what the CEB does and how the bank works. So for those of you not familiar with CEB, we call ourselves the Social Development Bank for Europe because we've got an exclusively social mandate with a focus on social cohesion. CEB is perhaps not as well known as the EIB, but we are the oldest multilateral development bank in the EU. It was created in 1956, originally as a resettlement fund to support EU member states in the movement of migrants, actually, at the time. So it started off with 8 member states. Current membership is 43 member states, covering all EU member states minus Austria and a number of other European countries in the Balkans. And our most recent member is the Ukraine. So CEB finances investments such as the ones we talked about today and provides technical assistance to support projects in the social sector. So we work with loans. Unlike the other big banks, we do not do guarantees and we do not work with equity, only with lending. So how do we work? In terms of financing, typical CEB borrowers include governments, subnational governments, so local authorities, regional authorities, cities, financial institutions, so other banks, national banks as well, microfinance institutions, and of relevance, I think specifically today, is operators and providers of social services and social infrastructure, including foundations, associations, NGOs. All of that is in our portfolio. We've got, somebody asks, what are your tickets like? So we've got big lending operations of 100 to 100 million, and we've got small ones of a couple of million as well. So catering for diverse needs. And I think also of relevance for today, our borrowers work in many of the sectors mentioned earlier of need. So we finance construction of hospitals, we finance long-term care, elderly care, education, early childhood education, and renewable energy. So these are all sectors we're very familiar with in terms of providing financial instruments, but not only financial instruments. So CEB works with a number of donors, including the European Commission. The EU is actually our largest donor, and we work on partnerships. So we work with grants, either implementing grants on a standalone basis or by combining them with our financial instruments, such as the loans I've just mentioned. Next slide. So yes, assistance to and integration of refugees is a CEB priority area and has always been from the very beginning. We've always invested in assistance and integration in host communities and looking at preparing for future migratory dynamics. So up to now, CEB has already invested around 2.8 billion since 2010 in loans to national and subnational governments and financial institutions, which have a focus on refugees. And this current strategic framework for the CEB, our priority is supporting jobs and economic and financial inclusion. So we've got this twofold priority area. One hand is refugees, and the other one is jobs, which again, topic of today. And lastly, I wanted to mention a program which we've just completed, and I think was mentioned in one of the first slides from a colleague from the European Commission, about a program called PAFME, which is an AMI-funded, EU-funded program, which combined grants with financial instruments. So the way it worked is that CEB issued a call for proposals, proposals that would relate to migrant integration, and that would demonstrate this combination of a CEB loan, so there had to be a CEB loan somewhere, with the need for an assistance. And we've selected four organizations or 4 projects. All of the projects were based on partnerships and complex partnerships of actors many of whom have never worked together before. Apologies, I can't see my slides. Yeah, so out of those 4 projects, 3 focused on entrepreneurship and employment, and 1 focused on education. So the projects were in Finland, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Italy. So again, Italy comes up. And what have we learned from PAFME? So first of all, blended finance works. So combining loans and grants does help to alleviate funding constraints, increases leverage, and involves financial actors such as microfinance institutions. We've also learned that we need to listen to the needs from the ground. So when we launched the call for proposals, we were open and expecting to receive applications from a number of sectors, but what we saw that the majority actually came from the microfinance segment. So yeah, that's where we found most need in terms of combination. And of course, advocacy, so engaging public and private actors to work together to address these barriers. And migrant partnerships and co-creation approach. I'm struggling now today as well. So that was actually, we learned most about that from Finland on co-creation and new dialogues. And I think that's number one whenever we're discussing how can we work to support any type of refugee programs. First of all, we have to listen to refugee groups and community organizations. In terms of partnerships, I think we have to begin with that. And as I mentioned earlier already, microfinance institutions can offer really good targeted support, especially when they received combined support. So microcredit access combined with business development services or interest rate subsidies can make a real impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliana. That was also very interesting. And the word partnership has again been mentioned, but also the importance of bottom-up approach and these selected geographies. It must be because of different appetites, perhaps, in different geographies around the member states and also around the cities. It is, I think, an important takeaway, at least from what we heard today. Yes, the word partnership has came up quite a lot of times. We're a bit behind, but could you briefly tell me what partnerships do you think are the most useful for supporting refugee labor pathways and the integration of migrants and refugees? What are the partnerships that are most useful, and what are those that are typically underused? Let me start with Sorcha. You, what do you think?
I think, you know, as you've picked up, it is an area where it's not just partnership. I think we need an ecosystem type of approach where we're working, you know, not only in countries of destination, but actually we need to work across that chain that you spoke about. So you're talking about working with training institutions that can be public or private in sending countries. You're working with the authorities there. So you're working with the governments to ensure that you can access visas. Then, you know, interestingly, you need a lot of migration, immigration, legal expertise to navigate what are often really complex processes. Then work with employers. And I think increasingly we see ourselves working with employer associations who can act as intermediaries for, or trade unions work across different sectors. So we're looking for employers that can work across the board, finance institutions, public authorities, and I think particularly at a city or a municipal level are really, really critical. And then for us, obviously, working across the charitable sector, and there it'll be a range of different actors performing different roles, but it really is a kind of a multi-sectoral ecosystem building approach and trying to figure out a complex web of different actors.
Thank you very much. What about the CEB? How do you think? What are those partnerships that are most effective and what are those underused?
Yeah, so as you said, multi-sectoral, of course. But I think as resources are quite limited, I think partnerships which can allow for co-financing, so public-private partnerships, those type of partnerships where we can leverage funds, so build on different sources of financing, I think it's very important.
Yes, yes, thank you. What about from your perspective as
I am agree with the other panelists, but we can add some subjects. But obviously, it depends by the goals that we have to reach. For example, in terms of social inclusion, in our experience, for example, we can see that it's important the advisory. For example, in useful advisory is the advisory in find the house, advisory that help organizations to access to social services. For example, just to give you an example, social housing. And it's interesting because in some cases they have access to social housing. In other cases, they can also access even to mortgages to buy the home. So there are different cases and different opportunities of helping social inclusion. On the point of view on entrepreneurships and the financial aspect, on the point of view of the entrepreneurship, I think that could be useful to talk at local level. For example, even with the Chamber of Commerce, we have tried to define, and we have defined some projects, some programs together with programs in which we have collaborated between we as a bank, microfinance institutions, and Chamber of Commerce, with the aim to put at disposal informations, non-financial services, and financial education. That is an important, very important aspect to help refugees even on this point of view, because they have to know financial and insurance aspects on the one side for their own personal needs, but also for the needs of their activities as self-entrepreneurships or entrepreneurs or co-workers of a cooperative. So there are different types of subjects, financial and non-financial subjects, that could be very useful in implement programs that obviously have to be helped also by the resources from microfinance institutions and so on.
Thank you. And the mentioning of chambers, it's very interesting. They are very knowledgeable often on the local matters and on the different needs of the enterprises they represent, or the different types of groups they represent. I'm glad we have the video feed. So I turn to you. Bruno, what do you think? What are those partnerships that are most useful?
Thanks, Andras. And I agree with a lot of what the other participants have said. But maybe I'll focus on a few things that have really worked for us in terms of partnerships. When it comes to generating demand for especially new segments, whether they're displaced workers or new sending countries, what we've seen is that for-profit mobility companies, who what we call can really pound the pavement when it comes to generating demand and securing those partnerships, have been really helpful. And I think Andras had mentioned earlier, they can also be incentivized to secure that employment through, say, results-based financing or other incentives. The second piece is around, on the supply side, really working with grassroots organizations like we have in Rwanda, who have a really strong presence with, say, refugee populations and can help spread the word about new job opportunities. But on the flip side, we have been working with diaspora organizations in Japan, for instance, to support with pre-departure, post-arrival, and worker welfare. And that's I just think back to the second question around being underutilized. They've done it before. They understand the context, and they're really the best place and really should be used more. And then the second category of underutilized partnerships, I will say, is we talked about financial institutions, but there's a bit of a low-hanging fruit here around financial institutions who are already lending for cross-border international education. So think about kids going from India to study in the States or the UK. In fact, if you think about it, that's actually a much riskier bet. You're not even sure if they're going to get a job at the end of it. So we've actually partnered with a few educational institutions in India, and have been talking to others in Kenya who already have an education portfolio when it comes to international lending, and thinking then about how can we incentivize them and reduce the risk to lending to this new segment when they already have a sort of intersection strategically. Thanks.
Thank you. It's interesting you mentioned education institutions. Of course, it depends on the education level of the refugees we are talking about, obviously, but it's a good point. Thank you. And as you are in the field, let me just have the second rapid follow-up question on the key financing needs. What do you think? What is the most, if you had to pick one, what is the most important financial need that need to be satisfied to effectively support refugee labor pathways?
Do you want me to go?
Yes, please.
Sure. I think boiling it down to what is the exact financing need, and it's really simply an issue of payments. So who pays when, and when is that payment needed? And so usually it's around a question of working capital. And again, I appreciate Andres, you said, it depends on the level of the education of the refugee. But I suppose the point we're trying to make here is cross-border lending has been done. It's actually been done on a much more uncertain bet. for other segments. And so when we're saying, especially when we're talking about refugees, refugee populations using productive pathways, there's actually a job waiting for them at the other side, provided they pass through the skills training or appropriate language training. So for us, is really once you address that issue of timing of payments, it's really I think the biggest constraint here is working capital for ecosystem actors, recruiters, training institutes, etc. And then just to throw in another one, though I know you said one, guarantees for financial institutions to offer relevant loan products and other financial products such as income share agreements. Thanks.
Thank you. Two is just fine. So same question to everyone. The two most important financial needs that would most effectively support refugee labour pathways further.
I think the one thing that I would point out is the fact that a lot of the costs happen in third countries and a lot of the value is accrued within the EU. And so financial instruments that can manage that complexity of actually the capital that you talked about, but also the complexity of working across different countries. Because I think what we see is a lot of the finance instruments will cover costs that occur within the EU, but actually the primary costs occur elsewhere.
Thanks. Going further, who wants to go first?
I would just say, not a type, but I would say stable sources of financing. So cheap and accessible financing, which we know will last for longer, so that projects can go on beyond 2-3 years. I think it's very important, not just for any organization involved, but also for the refugees themselves.
Yeah, stability. This is what you mean. Simona?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm absolutely agree, and I add probably could be useful to have also impact measurement metrics and instruments to help measuring the impact, because if when it's possible to measure the social impact realized, it could be there are better possibility to obtain investments by from social investors, to attract investments from social investors.
So kind of, as somebody put, proof points.
Yeah.
That can provide evidence to those potentially doubting the effectiveness of the intervention. Thank you very much. Thank you for the answers. I will encourage you later on to stay active. Now I turn a little bit to the audience. First with a little Slido. We would like to have a question on the sectors that, based on the discussion you just heard, you think, and your experience, of course, you think refugees could most realistically contribute in terms of filling labor gaps. And I'm much interested. I have a gut feeling that the other category will emerge. But not this time. Okay. Healthcare, elder care. Okay. Elder care. Elder care. Elder care. I think it was a sector that was mentioned in all of the, if I can recall correctly, all of the 8 interviews. I think healthcare and elder care, and this is very much understaffed. I think I can say safely in the majority of the EU member states. So that is the opinion of you and also the respondents who are online. But yeah, healthcare, construction, logistics, and green jobs are also there. Thank you very much. And we would go on with another one if you have your phones in your hand. And it will be a bit on a different subject. How can financial mechanisms be designed to create sustainable funding models? Juliana, you just talked about sustainability and stable financing model. What is needed to be done to have this work? You can select, if I can recall correctly, you can select more than one of these options. Coalition building, pilot projects. direct engagement, public awareness campaigns. Okay. So as we heard earlier, we have piloted ourselves to death.
I like projects.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. But yes, it seems, based on your opinion, yes, pilots are needed. I think it might be that some areas are very well advanced and can be scaled up effectively in some contexts, in some member states. For some stakeholders, pilots are still needed to get the assurance that they are on the right track. This is a very, very interesting conclusion. And with that, let me open the floor. Thank you very much for all the answers. Let me join the floor to you, to the audience. If we can, perhaps I can get a clicker. Thank you. And we would have, can we put the screen back? Apologies, Prerna, but we would need the screen for the audience. Although I would much prefer to have you in the board. But can we switch back to the presentation? Thank you. These are some guiding questions for you, both online and those in the room. Just for inspiration, what are the financing needs and initiatives in the area of refugee labor pathways? What stakeholder tools currently support refugee labor pathways? Key lessons learned? What could be the incentives for the future? What is the potential to scale refugee labor pathways up in the future? Many questions, but these are just guiding questions for you to raise your hand, either ask from our panelists or share your own experience. I open the floor to you. Yeah, go on.
Thank you. I'm Irene Lorenzo Cáceres, work for Pathways International. For those of you who don't know our organization, we are an organization present in more than 20 countries. We work to grow pathways to protection and opportunity for refugees and migrants. And we're working very closely with many organizations in the room, TVB, UNHCR, Labor Mobility Partnerships, and others to grow refugee labor mobility to Europe. Thanks partly or mainly to AMIF funding, so just wanted to say that. And I wanted to share some reflections based on our work doing that task. Maybe just two reasons why this matters and why scales matters. I think refugee labor mobility has a lot of potential also to change the conversation around migration and protection, because refugees come with a job and are contributing from day one. So it's a discourse based on contribution, but of course we need to deliver. And for that, one of the main obstacles that we're seeing is that we face the limits of legal frameworks, as Sorcha was saying, and I think working on refugee labor mobility, even if it's for tiny numbers, is a good stress test for the system to see where systems are really accessible and not. So it can also draw lessons for labor mobility more broadly, not only for refugees. In terms of what we are facing as barriers to achieve scale, I would say that we are seeing, to name obstacle number one, clear limits to the models that rely on one-on-one matching of vacancies and candidates, because they're very resource and very time intensive, as you were mentioning also in your report. So we need to move to approaches that work with pools, with cohorts, with pipelines of candidates. And of course, that requires upfront investment also by employers. Hence, the examples mentioned of not only using ISAs so that candidates can contribute to cost, to relocation support, or to travel. You can choose what they contribute to, but also we need to de-risk the investment of employers. Also partly for training that happens in countries of origin. So we need to invest in infrastructure. I think in terms of the partnership building, one limit that we're facing is that we are working within the humanitarian ecosystem, but we need to partner and bring to the table the actors working on development, local integration, upskilling, training, and those are not necessarily our usual partners. So that's also something that has very direct implications for funding. I'll wrap it up. In terms of financing, just wanted to address the issue of, that you were surprised that you found that the gap was, smaller than you thought. And I think that is partly because there is a lot of structural, systemic coordination costs that are right now covered by either public funds or organizations doing this job that do not really come up, when you do a costing exercise. And those are the costs that we really need to find innovative ways to finance. So very happy to have a conversation about how we do that. Yeah. It would be great to discuss how we, again, de-risk investment for employers to fund infrastructure and training in countries of destination. That is one key lever that we see in addition to the ISA model that was mentioned. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are running a bit behind. I see one there, maybe, okay, use the correct order. So go ahead, please.
Hi, Melissa Martineau from UNHCR. I'm the focal point for refugee labor mobility here in Brussels. And similarly to what Irene was mentioning, I think ecosystem building is very important. We talked about it. I think in the EU space, a lot of refugee labor mobility has been developed thanks to short-term army funding, which we are very grateful for, but that is not sufficient for ecosystem building. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that we have been relying a lot on the work done by other organizations, including UNHCR, but also many others in third country, which have been training refugees for decades, helping them access language training. That funding may soon end or be drastically reduced. Then we need to take into account these needs when we are planning the financing for this project.
Thank you. And whoever wanted to contribute, don't... Yeah?
No, please
go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Last intervention.
Thank you. So hello, good afternoon. I'm Birgit Arends, working for Eurochambers, the Association of European Chambers of Commerce and Industry in Brussels. As such, we represent the chamber network spanning across 43 European countries, meaning we are already operating beyond the EU borders. We have been involved, as well as our members, in different initiatives related to the integration of refugees in the labor market. And when I look at your first question, saying what are the financing needs of initiatives, we need them at all levels, from the origin country down to the very final country of arrival of the person, and at all steps. And to do this efficiently, yes, we do need partnerships. We need multi-stakeholder partnerships and bring the different people together. And how to say it? There is no one rule fits all in this, or one size fits all approach in this, because all of the countries are working with different ecosystems, local ecosystems, different cultures, different traditions, and we need to respect those if we want to also engage in a respectful process along the way. Now, speaking about the employer side, and also as an employer, we believe that more needs to be done beyond the financing aspect on the administrative burdens that these people face when they arrive in Europe. As an anecdote, us Eurochambers, as an employer, we have now very recently hired a third country national, not even a refugee, but we do need talents, and so we are also reaching out. And it took more than 4 months to get the necessary documents together for that person. And 4 months for an organization, for any company, is a very long time. And we do believe that more needs to be done on that stage. We know that this is not a European competence, but that the migration-related and work permit-related procedures are a member state competence. Still, we do believe that things do need to be sped up at that level. And knowing the time, I'll stop here.
Thank you, and apologies, but it is a very important takeaway time. and on the corporate end of the world, it is very important and key. Let me hand over back to Bruno.
Thank you very much. First of all, it was very interactive. It's amazing, and I guess we can stay here if there was not a coffee break waiting for us around the corner. First of all, I would like to thank Sorcha, Simone, Giuliana, and Prerna for this very interesting, and Andras for this. I'm gonna be soon out of a job if you do as well. Very good. No, thank you very much. A big round of applause. And what I would like to propose is a small break.
An announcement, sorry. Just the participants who attended Campus earlier and left coats or luggages upstairs, you can just go during the break, pick them up because they will close the
So, having said this, I propose, well, the break was supposed to last 15 minutes until 4:15. I would propose 4:20 because if there are people which need to go, but let's be back in the room at 4:20 sharp. And we still have an extremely interesting session. So let's try to stick to the time. Thank you very much. Thank you. So let's restart. And in the meantime, please take a seat. We're starting this second part of this workshop, and it will be about possible models, testing, how to harness and set up innovative funding, including blending and financial instruments. And to do so, I would like to invite on stage Filippo Chiesa from Permicro, Jan Brat, who is Policy Advisor, City of Utrecht in the Netherlands, Melanie Frisch, who is Federal Office of Migration and Refugees in Germany. Thank you, Melanie. And Christine Kellner, who is Federal Office of Migration and Refugees in Germany. She's coming, Christine. Okay, but we are not going to wait for her. We are going to start. It's okay. Very good. No. When you said 420 is 420. No jokes. Okay, very good. So I will use the same technique. I will handle to Andras, which will introduce the subject and actually moderate the session. Thank you, Andras.
Thank you, Bruno, for handing over. And just a logistical a note, we would like to finish sharp by 5 o'clock.
5, because I understand that there are trains to be catched.
Trains to be catched.
Within exactly. the panel members. So.
Exactly. So that is our aim. So we'd like to get the most out of the remaining time. So let's just jump into this. And I would like to start with Filippo. Very great to have you here from Permicro. And this session will be more about the potential solutions, as you can see, the possible models and testing how to harness and set up innovative financing solutions. As I mentioned in the beginning, we do not look for ready-made solutions. We would like to hear opinions, hear about potential solutions and your experiences. So with this note, I would like to ask you to tell a bit about yourself, but more on the impact achieved and more on the challenges you encounter and these possible solutions that might work in the future. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for having me here. I will start not to tell you about myself, but on another point of view, and then we come back to myself. Daisy, a young woman from Nigeria, has just arrived in northern Italy. She was welcomed by an NGO that works to combat the traffic of women. Her dream is to open a beauty salon, but today she doesn't know how to open a bank account, how to manage the financial service that bank offers, how to build her credit history, that it's crucial for her to access funds for buy a second-hand car, to try to find a job in an area without public transportation or public transportation. She needs also capital to pay the deposit to rent a flat. Gabriella, 32 years old, worked all her life as a pastry chef in her family's shop in Ecuador. She lost everything because of the drug-related violence. Now she wants to open her own business in Italy, but she knows nothing about the local food industry. So the premises, the Italian customers, how to build a business plan, etc. As you can see, all these stories, when we talk about refugees and their needs for empowerment, financial autonomy, and their ability to find or create their own job or business, it's crucial that programs and policy consider their different backgrounds, culture, lifestyle, life stage, and professional path. Refugees have very different needs in terms of financial education, financial family needs, coaching, mentorship, assessment of their entrepreneurial idea, writing down a sustainable business plan, etc. So, yeah, my name is Filippo Chiesa from Permicro, and we just clients are more important than me. So, but Permicro is still important. So, Permicro, it's our mission is to provide not financial inclusion, but first social inclusion throughout microcredit, microfinance. Not microcredit, microfinance. And so we disburse yearly 40 million euro to 3,000 people. Among that, migrants are and refugees are very important. We dedicate to migrants 70 million per year for 1,700 refugees. Families and micro business. In terms of micro business, we disburse 5 million to 250 refugees each year. But we think that we can increase this volume and also the number of people at least by 25% in the next five years, because the demand is huge, both for families and companies. So we have already benefited from EIB financial instruments, loans, sub-loans, guarantee funds, etc. and which are crucial because, you know, for working for MF5 is not so easy in terms of credit risk, in terms of time that you have to dedicate to most fragile people in terms of social and economical point of view. So we really need this financial instrument, and also European Commission support us through CAB, support our social programs, which allow us to test new financial tools and reach the most vulnerable. So microcredit, as a microcredit institution, we must be encouraged and enabled to go behind credit assessment. Real inclusion required financial education, personalized coaching, and professional mentoring, not just access to capital. This investment pay off. Since 2015, we measure impact, our impact with the Polytechnic of Milano. And so we know that microcredits can create new jobs, at least 1 or 1.3 per entrepreneur, per loan, plus the job of the entrepreneur, plus the jobs maintained. And it create increase in income, both for families and for entrepreneurs, more stable job for the both physical person and entrepreneur, the micro entrepreneur, and also bankability for people. And also, as we are here with many public body, we calculate that in the last 15 years, we, in terms of less expenditure for Italian government, local government, etc., and increasing in revenue of the government, we calculate that Permicro contributes for more than 110 millions. Okay. If we want to significantly scale out impact and enable more refugees to pursue their family, professional, and entrepreneurial ambition, we need blended financial instruments. Then span at least 3-5 years. Sustainable program requiring stable, long-term support. They are the bridge between today's vulnerability and tomorrow's citizenship, employability, and entrepreneurship.
Very nicely said. Thank you very much. And we took note of blended financial instruments. It's not the first time that it comes up. And I think you also reiterated the importance of personalized connections and solutions, and the importance of coaching among the target group. I think these are all very important. So thank you very much for sharing your perspective. And we will move on with the city's perspective. And in our prior discussions, we have talked to Eurocities, and Eurocities, as you know, it's a network of large European cities, starting out, I think, with 8 cities, and now it's a network of many more cities, and they some of them are already running initiatives in this subject. Not listing all of them, but among others, Marseille, Vilnius, Barcelona, Turin, or Milan. But today we will not hear about those, but we will hear about Utrecht. And I welcome Jan Braat in the panel. Jan, could you share your experiences through the lens of the city of Utrecht, and focusing on what might be the best ways to go about supporting refugee labour pathways? Over to you. Thank you.
First, I'm grateful to be in this panel, because the city perspective sometimes is a bit forgotten. Everyone is in Europe or national, international, but as we always say, integration happens in cities. And for example, we have in Utrecht a very good integration plan. It's called Plan Einstein. It's first also financed by the European Commission 8-9 years ago, and now it's you could say a model for the rest of the Netherlands. And on the moment we are trying to get that transferred to 5 other cities across Europe. So there are all kinds of possibilities. This is very short, but maybe next slide. But I will talk more about the labour pathways shortly. First, Utrecht, 380,000. We are a small country, then we are the 4th city, then biggest university, biggest train stations, highly educated. Our mayor is also the head of the Union of Dutch Municipalities, and there are a lot of companies also in Utrecht. So there is a lot of potential. What did we do? We developed for the last 1-2 years a public-private partnership with the city of Utrecht and the private sector. And the idea is from asylum to circular or labor pathways, from high cost to profits, from unilateral to working together, an ecosystem. We call it the same. It's already mentioned several times. From no future to perspective. We talk to all kinds of business. Here you see some of the big businesses in the Netherlands, and you see that many are dependent from migrants, and that's quite normal. If you look at ASML, one of the biggest business in the Netherlands, it's very much in. And if we talk with employers, they really want to know what is possible on labor pathway, because they want skilled people. They want to really, and they also want, as a CSI, to work with refugees. But the problem is how to do this. How to do this. Maybe next slide. So what? Oh, it's the other way around. Yes. What we did is we went, in this case, to Kenya, but we also contact with Morocco. And we went to Kakuma, to Nairobi, but also to Kakuma refugee camp. It's more than 300,000 people. And from refugees from everywhere across the east of Africa. And there are many people there which we talk to who are skilled. For example, young guys who are already 9 years there and were very skilled in ICT, because that's still possible if you have a computer and have Wi-Fi and in a refugee camp. We talk to IM, we talk to UNHCR, we talk to employers, we talk to job agencies in Kenya. So, and everyone says we need more skilled people. And one of the ideas, what we try to do is, we want those skilled people to be partly skilled in the Netherlands and then upskilled go back to Kenya, so that we can work also on the economic prosperity over there. And this Kenya is just an example, and we want to do it also with Morocco. But it can also be that the companies we work in the Netherlands, that they get through a labor pathways to here. So we have two kinds of solutions. Next slide. And what we did is we want to skill people up. The companies are willing to do that, not only in the Netherlands but also in Kenya or Morocco. They are really eager to do this. We want temporary employment, we want internships, and we want cooperation between Dutch companies and Kenyan companies. An example, Air France KLM and Kenya Airways will want to work together on this because they want to skill up people. They offered, for example, that in Corona time, they offered extra people from Kenya to Schiphol because there was a shortage of staff and long waiting lists. And they denied because, of course, Dutch things we are too proud of this kind of things. But then you see that there are all kinds of ideas. We want also the refugee camps. We're talking as an alternative for the normal way of coming to Europe through a refugee status. We want economic development also in the countries of origin. And we want to work to work together as cities, as national government, and especially companies to work together in an ecosystem on that. And the companies are really liking that idea because, as you know, that let's say the refugee issue is very political and very negative sense overall in the world, you could say, and they want really to have more a positive idea and work on a positive way. One of the day I already mentioned is the public-private partnerships. We want to work that as an accelerator. And we thought, okay, we work to Eurocities, Munich, Marseille, you see the different cities, but also the Union of Mediterranean City. We asked for money with the migrant a fund of the EU for labor pathways. They asked us to apply, and then in the end, they denied us. And then we think, what's happening here? Maybe it's political, I don't know. But we are all talking about what is possible. And why did we need the money? Not that we need some money to build the ecosystem and to make sure that someone says it's about timing. First, you need some funding, grants to build the ecosystem. And after that, you can go to blended financing or loans or in everything what is already said today. But we tried also with private funds, international. Everyone say, yeah, but this idea is a bit too bold. It's too bold. It was already said. And you said we need bold people. Here we are. We are cities, want to be bold. But we also want the finance institutions to be bold. Otherwise, it won't fly off. It won't fly off. Next slide. Last slide. So in the end, it's growth for all. It's upskilling and employment. We need international public-private and shared funding for the implementation. Maybe we want some rule-free space, because there are a lot of rules and they are all mixing together, and then you go nowhere. And we want social economic prosperity for all. So the idea is there, but let's make it happen.
Thank you very much, and I think it is a brilliant thing to bring to cities into this. Cities are very knowledgeable on what happens on their territory, so it's really nice to have your perspective. To me, I didn't see your slides, but it was shocking to see 30 to 50% rates for these major corporations. That is not 1-2%. That is a strategic amount. So the boards must be on the table of the board members.
Without them, it won't be possible to have the company.
But it is an executive question, and this is the maturity where it is taken seriously. And as we began, there is an explicit demand, the side of the employers, very important in order to make the whole pathway work. Thank you. And also thank you for these pictures. I really enjoyed them, because sometimes we just need to stand up from our warm chairs and just go on the ground, and then we understand the context and can move all this forward. As we know, the city of Milan is online. I don't see the participant list in front of me, but Elena, if you are online.
Hi, yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
A little bit change in the agenda, but just for the audience, we had a last-minute discussion with Milan, and I think we can sacrifice a little bit of question time in order to hear Elena's brief summary of what happens in Milan. Thank you for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm actually going to offer a blended perspective of UNHCR Italy and the municipality of Milan. I work for UNHCR Italy, and thank you for this opportunity to share our experience in refugee integration within the framework of our cooperation with the municipality of Milan and Labour Pathways. So Milan has played an important role in advancing inclusive services for refugees, and I'd like to highlight some of the work that we are doing together. Solutions for refugees are about safety, but also access to services, jobs, and community participation. And this is why our collaboration with municipalities and Milan, in this case, is so crucial. Through the Spazio Comune program, we support municipalities in creating multifunctional centers with a one-stop shop approach, making essential services accessible quickly and effectively. And Milan began working on this concept early on and has been a key partner in shaping the approach. The Milano Welcome Center embodies this vision, and it offers a wide range of services for refugees and migrants, including job inclusion support, legal support, and also ensures accessibility through multilingual front desk operators. These actions are carried out in the framework of a co-design process that brings the municipality together with civil society organizations and international organizations. And this really speaks to the shared financing and implementation that was mentioned earlier. At the Milano Welcome Center, we also have a welcome liaison officer, a person working under UNHCR's Welcome Working for Refugee Integration program that helps designing tailor-made job inclusion pathways in close coordination with municipal and local services. And this partnership is key to turning opportunities into real employment. These foundations, combined with the work that has been done in Italy on complementary pathways in previous years, has led to the development of the first labor pathways for refugees. Italy introduced the possibility of labor pathways for refugees in a 2023 legislative reform, a milestone for durable solutions. And this effort brings together UNHCR Italy, the Ministries of Interior, Foreign Affairs, and Labor, as well as Talent Beyond Boundaries, Pathways International, and the Waldensian Diaconia. And this partnership is also supported by an ecosystem of civil society organizations, private foundations, and companies. And in addition, UNHCR Italy also has an agreement with Banca Etica specific to supporting refugees' labor pathways. So looking ahead, in addition to ongoing labor pathways in 2026, we are exploring to launch in Milan new labor pathways, aiming at welcoming 30 refugees from Uganda and Cameroon to work in the health and transportation sectors. So thank you for your attention and also for the shared commitment to advancing solutions for refugees.
Thank you. I think we can have a round of applause for Elena, and thank you for joining in such a last-minute manner. But I think it was a real addition to this discussion. Thank you very much. A little bit changing on our agenda. I can't resist the urge to turn to Germany and hear about initiatives that are already existing. I think it is a wonderful closing section for this discussion because you already have some thinking on this subject. Could you please share where you are in the process and what are your achievements so far and what you expect to happen in the future? Over to you. As I understand, both of you will speak, so I will ask you to share your experiences.
Okay, so thank you, Andras, and thank you also for the invitation. And we took a lot of inspiring input from the previous sessions, I think. And so my name is Melanie Frisch, and I represent here the AMIF, the German AMIF Managing Authority, which is situated in Nuremberg, within the Federal Office for Migrants and Refugees. So we are here now as already some managing authorities in AMIF were mentioned, and as they are also online here, but they are not yet using financial instruments, so neither do we. And but we'd like to take an approach, and we would like to share now with you the perspective of the German AMIF Managing Authority. So we have so far no practical experience in implementing financial instruments, but we are highly interested. And on this point, I'd like to thank you, the EIB, and Anna Zurek also in person, because she started with a workshop in Nuremberg for us in June 2024, and she introduced us how managing authorities in AMIF can use financial instruments, and we greatly appreciate this professional support. And our current situation is now, and our current question, how we can still implement financial instruments in the ongoing AMIF period, which will end in 2029. So we are subject to some framework conditions in our approach. First of all, the main restraint maybe there are budget constraints. So we are already in the second half of the funding period, and in our planning, most of our AMIF national funding in the shared management is committed. So if there would be a possibility to get additional funding, then we would be ready, or would be try to start a pilot in this funding period. Otherwise, we think about it in the next funding period. And yeah, this leads to the time constraints, as we have no experience and as financial instruments must be used by 2029, at least if there are loans, they have to be committed or at least before 2029. So this is leaving us limited time for planning and the implementation. And last but not least, as we are a managing authority and a shared management, of course, we are bound by Germany's political framework. So it was very interesting, all these discussions about legal pathways, of course, and I think there is also some German approach, but we are not talking from the political side. We are talking from the management, so 1 year ago, after your workshop, we considered using financial instruments to support third country nationals in resettlement or humanitarian admission programs, or to accelerate these programs in terms of, like was the theme of the subject of the whole workshop, like legal pathways. But yeah, in Germany, these programs target vulnerable persons, and to start a pilot in financial instruments, we think in our assessment this is not the right target group for repayable support. It's more for grants. So instead, our approach is now that we focused on our existing projects, and we have quite a lot experience in the field of legal pathways in funding grants so far with the national funding. And one promising area in this area is attracting skilled workers and their family. And now my colleague Christine will elaborate on this.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Christine Kellner. I'm a colleague of Melanie and working as well in the arm of Managing Authority. Yeah, well, so currently AMIF Germany supports 21 projects financing legal pathways in the field of pre-integration and early integration of skilled third country nationals. So with an AMIF budget of about 50 million euros. So funding measures of these projects include mainly services for the people. So like counseling, welcoming coaches, training on living and working in Germany, language courses, and also a labor market entry kind of matching. We think financial instruments could top up these kind of projects and could help to cover more costs which we are not covering at the moment with funding. So this could be costs such as translation and certification of documents, initial household equipment after arrival in Germany, also rental deposits for houses or flats, maybe also costs for private language courses or integration courses, or maybe also mobility related expenses, especially in the countryside and rural areas, like purchasing a car or getting a driving license, which is really expensive, or maybe also costs for childcare to enable labor market participation. So yeah, these are first financing gaps we identified so far from our existing projects, and yeah, we think personal loans or microloans could support integration by addressing these needs. There are as well, we've heard today, there are as well financing gaps pre-departure in the country of origin. Yeah. But yeah, to be honest, as we are quite new in this field, we prefer, or we would like to concentrate on the financing, on the cost situation in Germany after arrival. looking at our projects and according to our assessment so far, potential partners which could be included in our ecosystem could be municipal and state institutions like welcome centers we have in Germany, or the employment agencies, as well chambers of industry and commerce, of course, migrant organizations, and also educational institutions. So to conclude, we would appreciate very much if we could continue the consultation process with FE Compass and EIB on this topic. As setting up financial instruments is very complex, and we need to build expertise in a quite short time, very quickly. So if we still want to implement financial instruments within this ongoing funding period. This is a small input so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think it was a very vivid example of how the thinking should start, how much time it takes. It was very interesting to hear about exactly what I mentioned at the beginning, that you have already started to identify the elements that might be suitable for repayable financing and what are those that might not be. And I think the word topping up is very adequate in this context. So on the top of grants, the financial instruments can play and implement an important complementary role. So thanks for these examples, Melanie and Christine from Germany. And we are through with the panels, the speeches. I think some of you may need to catch a train. Feel free to leave if need be. But we are, so the session ends at 5:30. So, but if you need to leave, just feel free to go. We will not be taking this on a personal level. So thank you very much. Bringing a little bit of liveliness into this, we would like to continue with Slido. And we have 4 questions. So it will be a bit longer sessions, but I think you in the panel, you can also take your phones and vote. And if you have it with yourself. And we have discussed about the pathway, the stages of the pathway. And we had very good panel talks. We had good discussions in this coffee break. We always think the coffee break should be longer because the best ideas sometimes come during this period. But based on what you learned, what do you think, for which stages of refugee labor pathways could repayable forms of support, like loans or guarantees, be suitable, or I would say most suitable? Please make your choices. Pre-departure, arrival and relocation costs, training and preparation. I think by training, we mean training here in the EU. Placement support or early work period. Interesting. During arrival, there are many costs that are not suitable for repayable forms of financing. But still, it is interesting to read this. I'm a bit surprised to see this, but still, it is worth exploring further. Maybe just very briefly, those who chose this option, just to reflect. Yeah, please. You have a wonderful, great voice. So, but for the online participants, let's use the microphone.
Thank you, and hi everyone. My name is Rob. I work for IOM. I work for the Belgian country office, and we're actually implementing complementary pathways for displaced talents and refugees. And indeed, yes, I voted for arrival and relocation costs because what do we see? We see that the moment of arrival is really the most difficult period, or just before arrival until, you know, like take month 3 or 4 in the job. That is the most difficult period also from a financial perspective. You typically see that the incoming workers or refugees struggle, you know, first in finding housing being very expensive. Someone mentioned indeed the rental guarantees and so on. These are funds that these people typically do not have in pocket. But on top of that, yes, once you rent something, you need to furnish it. Once you furnished it, you need to get out and get to your job. So you need a subscription to the railways, or you need to buy a second-hand car or whatever. There's so many things. If you have children, you have costs related to that, you know, subscription in schools and so on. So there's so many things that you need to cover in those 4 months. It's just a lot, right? And so the migrants that we at IOM accompany, they really tell us, you know, this is an extremely stressful moment because of all the changes in our lives, our new life, our new job. But on top of that, this financial pressure, right? And I think that for the arrival phase, there are possibilities, I think, to look into indeed blended funding or even working with loans, right, or micro loans, because yes, these people have a contract. I mean, they're here for work, but they haven't got the salary slips yet, or they haven't been paid yet. But there is yes, documented proof that there is a potential to pay back. So you could convince, you know, any type of provider of loan that, you know, a small loan, and we're not talking huge loans here, right? It's really micro loans. It's a few thousand euros, I think, could really take away a little bit that pressure and ease, you know, the onboarding stage after arrival for these people, with then a payback that you would typically see over, you know, 24 months, maybe a little bit more, depending. You also see, because we have similar funds at IOM also in North America, that there is typically a high payback rate. So also there you see that I think it's between 95 and 97%. So that is also, again, a concept, a proof of concept that, you know, it's not that risky. But it's true that nobody wants to, in the market, and nobody will rent out anything. If they go to a bank, you know, they don't even have an address yet, right? They don't have much that they can rely on at the bank to provide a loan. So that will not work. So there is a need there for an alternative, I think. And that's why I voted indeed for this category just after arrival. Thank you.
Thank you very much for explaining. And sometimes I forget, but I turn to my colleagues about online chats, whether there are any inputs. No. Then move on to the next poll. And thanks again for sharing this, because these are absolutely valid points. The next question is about the preparedness of current actors, and more specifically, are current actors, specifically NGOs, cooperatives, social enterprises, ethical bands, sufficiently prepared in terms of capacity and risk appetite to take on repayable financing? Difficult question. 1 to 5 scale. 1, not prepared. 5, absolutely prepared at all levels. We are Europeans. we are polite. Yes. Okay. 2 is taking over. Okay. It's not 1. This is my first takeaway. It's not 1. So without any sarcasm in this, I think it is important that the ecosystem has moved away from 1. And it is evolving. That is what I read from this. Of course, it's not a representative survey, but there is much to do. 4 and 5 are marginal, in your opinion. So preparedness is one thing that programs, grants, authorities, stakeholders can and should focus on, because this is a must-have. Without this, the repayable instruments cannot work. Thank you very much for all the answers. Moving on to the third question. Don't take away your phones. The third question is about needs. In terms of capacity and willingness to manage financial risks, what would your organization need to be better prepared to take on repayable financing for scaling refugee labor pathways? For this question, please, if you are a consultant or not someone who is potentially taking on repayable financial risk, please skip the voting. But if you are an organization who can somehow relate to this, please do vote. We need your opinion. So what does your organization need? Technical assistance, collaborations. I think multiple answers are allowed. Choices can be made. Good. Wait a couple of more seconds. Seems like it's not changing. Yeah, yes. Okay. Stop. Partnerships. We have discussed this. We had the question in the earlier panel about partnerships. I would be happy to ask it again, but we have limited time, unfortunately, but partnerships are very important. But while I was talking, technical assistance took over, and I think that was one conclusion from the interviews, that all of the actors throughout the discussions highlighted that they, on top of financing, they need extra support, knowledge, proof points, as we already discussed, something of a training to be able to cope with the challenges related to this. So with this result, I'm absolutely not surprised to see. Thank you. And we have a final one. And I know I could do this all day long, But this is the final one, and a simple one. Would your organization be interested in establishing innovative finding approaches, such as blending or financial instruments, to further aid refugee labor pathways and integration, if the Commission would make available more EU support for that purpose? Long question, but very short answers. It's about the interest. We will record your answers and reach out to you. Okay. Should I wait any longer? Yes. Okay. It's a yes. Depending on the partnership and provided the right conditions are met. We have discussed conditions, so it's very important. It does not work automatically. There are some things that need to be in place. As we heard about the German example from Utrecht, one of the conditions was to go there and see it for yourself. And also for Per Micro, it's about working with those groups directly. It needs these personal interactions, as we discussed earlier. So that is a good takeaway. Just for the record, 0% said no. So it means a really fruitful series of conversations with the people involved. Thank you very much. And I'm looking at my clock. We have a couple of seconds for questions. So I would like to move the slides to questions, back to the slideshow. And we have really just 5 minutes for questions. Who would be the final recipient of such financing schemes? I have presented the opinions of people you have also heard. The refugees, microloans, personal loans, the companies, the employers, or other involved actors like NGOs. How can pilot projects be designed to reach scale? We have heard a lot about scalability. And what are the expected financial needs? And I think we talked about partnership setups. So any opinions? I think we have a good 5 minutes for this. Any opinions? Question? Go ahead, please.
We have this model that we have built in Italy that Sorcha and the colleague online was mentioning, We have ISAs actually covering for relocation costs and relocation support, so that is possible. We have an NGO managing the ISAs and accepting that risks. How could we use EU funds, blended finance, to support the growth of this system through either guarantees or any other type of mechanism that can leverage more investment into this revolving fund? Because at the moment it's just like one philanthropy investing the initial capital, and it would be great to know exactly how we could leverage and grow this this mechanism through EU funds.
You mean which mechanism?
The model that we have to finance scale of labor pathways in Italy that is based on ISA supported by a revolving loan fund.
Okay. Maybe you're the best person.
Okay. As I mentioned before, and we need, well, it's a very long issue, but I think we need to. NGO doesn't really know microcredit in Italy. In the last 2-3 years, we had a program to empowering labor for migrants in Piedmont, and we experiment that microcredit is not well known in Italy. So this is the first step. And second step, NGO don't operators have many problems, daily problems, and for them it's quite difficult to deal with financial problems of refugees, because refugees don't really trust the operators, don't want to let the operators know many things, etc. And we start to do financial education classes to operators and refugees, different classes. So to know how to deal with financial instruments, bank system, etc. I think the blending project are the future of our sector, because push us to not just to assess the credit, but enlarge the target group, enlarge the partnership, enlarge the financial tools, not just focus on the assessment, the credit and access the credit, but also financial education, push us to financial education, take the refugee from the year 1 and to the year 5, when he will be able to maybe find a better job, start a startup, etc. I don't know.
Okay, thanks. I saw another hand raised somewhere in the audience. Yeah, okay. Last question, unfortunately.
No, in terms of this question, who would be the final recipient? I think that also it depends on the country, because the issue that maybe here as well is that different countries have different policies and also different stakeholders involved. So what works for Italy might not work for another country. So just to mention that. What I found quite interesting, and it came quite late into our research before this workshop, is the role of the cities, actually. And you know, we're just brainstorming a little bit. There are the urban development loans to cities that cover a broad range of different projects, and such projects could be part of it. And some of them also are combined with or blended with grants as well. So maybe there is also a potential here. Thank you.
Anna, thank you very much. It was a great rounding up, and we are available after this in writing. Thank you very much for all the panelists in this session and also in the previous one. It was a pleasure talking to you. We learned a lot. With this note, I stop here and hand it back to Bruno.
Thank you, Andrea.
And thank you.
So a big thanks to Filippo, Jan, Melanie, and Christine. Thank you very much. Very good. So we are leading towards the end of this workshop, and I would like to ask Döde Ackers, head of Unit E3 North West Central Europe at DG Home, to provide some closing remarks. Am I right? East, West, North, everything. Yeah, as you want, as you prefer. Over to you. The floor is yours. Or if you want to come to the lecture, as you want.
It's okay. Thanks a lot, everyone, for the very interesting, fruitful contributions. I personally have been working on this for several years, the financial instruments, and actually I was very pleased to learn a lot still today in the workshop. So it was enriching for me personally. There's one sentence that stuck, and that is, there is an idea, but now let's make it happen. And what we did, you saw the last Slido question. If there is an interest, would you want, if you get additional money, are you interested? And the answer was overwhelmingly yes, provided that the right conditions are met. So what we would like to tell DG Home is that, having also been in contact with the Germans and hearing this very positive response, we would like to provide some additional funding next year to further experiment in this area with financial instruments. And the way we would like to do that is early next year, probably in January, to make a sort of an open announcement where we invite people to come with their first ideas. We give a rough budget, we ask for first ideas, and then we will see further how to elaborate that and how to provide a mechanism for support. And I think if we learn from this session today that in those ideas, there should be many dimensions. So the right conditions is very complex. From what I understood, I heard 3 dimensions. One was about partnerships. So who are the actors? Who do you bring together? The other was about the financial instruments. So what's the nature of the financial instruments? What's their timing? What's the sequence? You have maybe a focus on some working capital. Maybe you want to mix up grants with loans. And then the last element, I would say, is the sectors where you want to focus on. And I think it's very important that when people come with their ideas, they put all these things together and they come with something that can work. There was also a comment from the German colleagues, which we should bear in mind. They had already a serious reflection, thanks to the technical expertise also of the European Investment Bank. What is the right target population to experiment with such a thing? And maybe it's not vulnerable groups. That is what the Germans said. So I think it's very important to also reflect on your target population and on the sectors. Bearing in mind also what we heard about employers not always being very visible about their demands. So all this needs to be taken into account. And I think from our side, we would be super open to getting new pilot projects, which in a way can contribute to this idea of a nascent ecosystem in this area. So building that up. So a few things that can be afterwards scaled up, and please add in a few good experiments and elements. I mean, we heard you need business development services. You need the perspective of the cities. You need to find a way to agree with employers on upskilling. You need to choose probably loans because they seem to be the most promising. In terms of financial instruments, you need financial inclusion education for your target population, public-private partnerships, etc. This was my first short list, but I can imagine there are other elements that will make a really, really successful project. Because if we have a few successful projects now in this period, under the tight time frame that the Germans indicated, we will get hopefully lots more money in the period 2028, 2034, where for the moment it is not on-programmed. So if there are good pilot projects at work, you can, in that period, come to something which is like a real full-scale program. So lots of ambitions to close, and maybe I should finish by saying a big thank you to the team of Bruno, Anna, the excellent moderator, the other Anna, and till the next workshop, I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Döde. So we are, thank you for these closing remarks. We are really at the end of this workshop. So there is only time left to thank all the speakers. You resisted until the end of the afternoon, and it's remarkable, I would say. Thanks also for the audience. I will not forget the technology experts who supported us today, despite all the odds. Thank you very much. And all the people which make this possible, of course, the team. And also we plan to summarize what has been said or the key points raised today in a document. And we plan to share this hopefully. So next week is already December, let's say by the end of December. So that is the plan, and together with the recording of this workshop. Anyway, whenever we are ready, you will be notified with an email. Thanks again. Just time to say safe trip back home. Bye-bye, and see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much.